So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino. And joining me as always is your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And Eric, we are back after a much-deserved week off. And, we both took time to go to events. I was at a wedding. You went to Spookala with, our friends and my sister. And we've just been very busy. And it was, a nice time to step away from podcasting for a little bit. But as we turn the corner into the last 3 months of the year, which is insane to say, we are back to it and back to work because we are here with Late to the Party, which is always our first episode of each and every single month. And Eric, it is Spooktober, one of my favorite times of the year, as well as, we put up our awesome Halloween-themed logo that our friend Jordan made for us every year at midnight so far. I have been on point in putting that thing on all of our social medias. It's one of my favorite things to do each and every single year, and we wanted to go with a lot of horror-themed episodes this month, which we are doing. And we're starting off here with the Late to the Party episode with Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Now, this is not your straightforward horror film, as you guys will learn as we discuss it and talk about it here today. But Eric, it's a movie that I had heard of for quite some time now, and it has a lot of, I think it definitely has a bit of a cult following because I had not heard of it until really the last couple of years. It's got a pretty solid score on IMDb, Letterboxd, all of that, and I think it's a good commentary on and parody on the slasher horror film, which is why I recommended it. So really excited to talk about it here today, and hopefully for those of you that have not seen it, convince you to watch it as well, as it is a fun time.
This does feel in line with the type of horror movie you would recommend, because you are not the horror buff in the family. We know that goes to friend of the show, Philin. But yeah, this is very interesting because I had no clue what this was about. I have heard of it in name and name alone, and I was like, oh, okay, it's probably going to be somewhat funny, but no, it's like a full-on parody of the horror genre. So that was interesting, to say the least. I'm excited to talk about how I kind of navigated through figuring that out on my own to then really enjoy and appreciate the film. But I do think, Phil, even as a casual horror fan, this definitely offers something for everyone from that parody standpoint. If parodies are not for you, well, then that is definitely going to be a big problem. For us, Phil, we always like a good time, and it's not like this movie held back on some of the horror elements like blood. So it was definitely not tame, but yeah, I was just surprised of the parody-ness of this. Did not see that coming, and excited to share my thoughts on my first watch through.
Well, that's good. I thought maybe you had some sort of idea of the premise of the film, so actually the fact that you went into it not really knowing at all and kind of got surprised by it does excite me. So really looking forward to this conversation. We'll give you guys a disclaimer right here. This movie's been out for 14 years. It is kind of the theme of Late to the Party that we talk pretty openly and freely about the movie. The whole movie's premise is pretty much a spoiler. So just want to give that out to you here before you listen to this episode. Definitely recommend you go watch it yourself. It's a pretty brisk, hour and maybe 45 minutes. It's not a very long watch. And but it is very heavy on some of the gore and some of the kills that happen throughout the film. But we'll discuss that here in just a moment. I want to welcome any returning listeners, as well as all you brand new listeners to the podcast. Perhaps we met you in Ocala, or maybe we ran into you at, hopefully, knock on wood, InfinityCon this weekend here in Gainesville, Florida, or a little bit south here of Jacksonville, barring the storm. For any of you that are, this episode will come out on Wednesday, so for any of you that are in the path of Milton, we hope that you stay safe and, wishing the best for you and your families. But yeah, and also, of course, as always, returning listeners, thank you so much for the continued support. We are very much excited to have you guys here for the end of the year as well as going forward. So, Eric, let's go ahead and jump into Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I will go with the letterbox synopsis of this film here. And it is two hillbillies are suspected of being killers by a group of paranoid college kids camping near the duo's West Virginian cabin. As the body count climbs, so does the fear and confusion as the college kids try to seek revenge against the pair. This movie was directed by Eli Craig, who has a short list of director credits under him. Probably the only other thing you guys may recognize, and it's not a good thing, is the Zombieland TV show, which was very short-lived. I think as short-lived as you possibly could be, because I think it was only one episode, and it was terrible. Eric, this is one of those YouTube rabbit holes I went down as far as the Zombieland TV show. Did you know, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, did you know that for the Zombieland TV show, instead of going with what maybe would be the smart route, like they did with, say, Fallout, right? Totally new character, original character, they just recast new people as the same Zombieland main characters, and they were terrible. So, to give you guys a little insight into the Zombieland TV show, a little bit of extra late to the party information here from the Tucker and Dale versus Evil episode. So, Eric, as you're navigating this movie, walk me through it, because again, I knew the premise of this movie, and I think this is interesting because it ties back to a story I discussed on What Did I Miss, maybe a couple months back, about the Scary Movie franchise returning, and you're not very enthused about that, but I think if it's done correctly, it can be really funny. And I think when it comes to parodies, you and I have, I have always been a pretty big fan of them, and I think Tucker and Dale versus Evil does this very well when it comes to this specific horror trope that we see quite a bit.
Yeah, so definitely didn't know, because again, you're going off of just the title. So Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I'm thinking, okay, these two redneck dumb characters that they're playing up are gonna fight some demons or ghosts or some type of supernatural evil, and that's not what happens in this movie at all. And Phil, obviously from the get-go, very cringe dialogue, very cringe acting. I wasn't sure, are we watching a lower tier B horror movie? Is it a parody of a B horror movie? I'm trying to figure these things out as we go along. And then my brain just told me, hey, dummy, just enjoy this. Just have a little bit of fun, because it's so fucking stupid. It's so stupid. And honestly, you kind of have to reach that level of dumb and stupid for your brain to turn off. And that's what my brain did. My brain turned off and said, you know what? I think I'm going to just try to enjoy this. And for a story that revolved around these college kids and these two hillbillies, yeah, it did what it needed to do. So I enjoyed the film. Is it my cup of tea? Great question. Horror already isn't my genre, and it's one that I appreciate, and there are elements that I like, but it's not what I gravitate towards. Same thing with parodies. Parodies, when done right, I really enjoy, but again, you will eat up any parody film. We could go through the list of parody films that you've made me watch over the years. We're not going to do that, but there are some we've quoted that I hate myself for. So this will probably be one of them for a while, but I gotta admit, did enjoy it by the time the credits rolled.
Yeah, and to give you guys some more context, my favorite horror movie is Cabin in the Woods. And if you don't know anything about Cabin in the Woods, absolutely go watch that. I will not spoil Cabin in the Woods for you, because it is, I think, one of the best, not only just parody films, but in terms of the dialogue on the horror genre itself, I think it's one of the best films that's available to watch. So when you're talking about, the Tucker and Dale versus Evil in terms of what's happening here, think of the Wrong Turn movies, movies such as I guess very on a minor level, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, people that are out in places that they're not supposed to be. So you have these college kids, immediately they have that like you said, Eric, cringy early 2000s dialogue, the guy with the pop collar, and the group of people there's the stoner, then the nerd, and the jock, and all that kind of stuff. So that's exactly what's going on here. And obviously the most important part of this film, and Eric, you didn't get to see them, unfortunately. You didn't have time to go check out Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine, who Eric could have seen as Spookala, but just did not get the chance to do so. If you want to explain what happened there, that's up to you. But Alan Tudyk has always been one of our favorites from, just multiple appearances, not only within the Star Wars universe, but so many other projects. I mean, we're actually just bummed to hear today that he is unfortunately going to have to reschedule his Collective Con appearance for next year, but hopefully we'll see him very, very soon. And then Tyler Labine, who has been in, I haven't seen this movie, but I have seen the kill count. He is in the Escape Room movies, and he's actually pretty good in that. I've heard very, very good reviews of his performance there. But as far as like just their friendship, like Dale specifically is just such a wholesome and lovable character, and they obviously present them very like menacingly in the beginning, and then you learn that Dale is just essentially a giant big oaf, and a big like Saint Bernard puppy, and then his friend as far as Tucker is just trying to give him confidence and also show him a good time, and it's just a really good like wholesome friendship movie. And then when everything goes to shit, that's when you kind of like realize exactly what is fully going on. This is very much again a commentary on as far as assuming who people are, and prejudice, beliefs, and lack of communication, misunderstanding. All of that is going on here, and they use that very well in terms of pairing it with like the horror. Like to the kids, they're in a horror film, right? They're in Wrong Turn, they're in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But to Tucker and Dale, they're like, what the fuck is going on? We're just trying to help this poor girl. And then complete madness ensues. So, and like you said, Eric, it is a turn off your brain movie, and just have a good time. I think this also would be a very good movie to watch with friends when you want to have like a lighter horror movie night. Because in terms of horror, there's not really a lot here except for in the beginning, like the prologue, right? The rest of it is more of leaning into the confusion from both parties.
That makes sense. Yeah, I would say the way I looked at it is this movie is Final Destination if it was a comedy. So that's kind of the way I took it based off of.
You can make the argument that Final Destination kind of a comedy.
kind of an unintentional comedy for sure. But yeah, again, when we say horror, we're using that very loosely. There's no jump scares. There's nothing that's going to scare you, or nothing even very grotesque. Although, again, when you jump into a like a wood chipper, you just jumped into the wood chipper.
It's a great visual too. It's hilarious. It's so funny. It's
unsettling, is what it is, and very funny, very funny. So it was around that time in the movie where I was like, okay, this is the amount of like dumbness we're gonna stoop down to. That's what the movie is trying to talk about. It is, again, the parody on the genre itself and a lot of the cliches that horror movies are known for, especially in the space that it was specifically kind of parodying. So I was perfectly fine with all of that. Again, from a gore perspective, I thought there was a lot of use of blood. It wasn't tamed, so it kept me interesting because I was kind of curious at points, Phil, like, I wonder how far they're going to take that. And while they never went as far as I think they could have, again, it wasn't tame in any manner, so it always kept my interest piqued to kind of wonder, well, what's the next kill gonna look like? What's the next misunderstanding gonna be? And again, just turn your brain off, watch it, have a good time. It really is that simple of a film, which is why this may be one of our simpler episodes of Late to the Party in a minute, because there's not much more beyond that premise. And Phil, I mentioned that walking into this movie, I didn't really know what to expect. But once you've gotten 30 minutes, which is a third of the way through of this film, you pretty much know what you're in for. So on that note, if you have listened and you haven't checked it out at this point, I would recommend just give it a shot. You're going to know within 30 minutes if it's for you. Otherwise, turn it off. I think most people, Phil, are willing to keep it on because it is a good time. It's lighthearted with that horror element, the gore, all of that extra stuff that people enjoy from the genre.
Yeah, I really think I've found my niche when it comes to the horror films. And even though, like I already mentioned, Cabin in the Woods, favorite horror film, one of my other favorite films of the year is Abigail, and Abigail's very funny. And Abigail's also not really that scary. There are a couple jump scares in it, but it's a film that I got through pretty easily. So with people such as we have Jordan Peele now jumping into, obviously horror, and he's doing an amazing job being able to mix the comedy in with the horror. Like I'm in a good spot right now when it comes to that. So like we said, we'll see what the Scary Movie remake looks like, or the reboot, whatever they want to call it. They definitely need to make sure they cast Anna Faris and then start from there. But yeah, it is a wholesome, not too gory time. All the kills are things that you have seen before, so if like you are a little squeamish, it's nothing you haven't seen in like a Last of Us, or like a video game that you have played elsewhere. So really, really fun time, and like I said, I think it would make for a really solid movie night. Like there's not really too much else to discuss here, I guess, as far as just horror. As far as spoilers go, Eric, did you have a favorite kill? It's got to be the wood chipper. That was the most the
wood chipper. Then they had to get him out of the wood chipper.
Yeah. And they're like dragging the body back, and then that's when the stupid cop comes up and
and gets impaled in the head. That's, again, a lot of memorable moments from the movie. But yeah, the wood chipper, definitely prime scene for me.
And it leans into all of the corny dialogue you see in these slashers from the college kids for sure. And it just makes you realize like how just silly all of those films are. And, that's why I think horror in terms of just a genre itself, like it won't ever go anywhere. Like if you can just continue to reinvent yourself and lean into the campiness, I think the more campy a horror film, the better. Those are the ones that I've enjoyed personally quite a bit. Now, but on the other side, like if you want a pure scare, like there are also those directors that are doing those out there very, very well. So, and I think it is time. I don't know how you feel about this, Eric, but I do think it is time for horror to be recognized as far as an Academy Award, like a specific Academy Award. Maybe you could name it something else other than horror. I don't know what you would do, but I know there's been a lot of conversation in terms of, one, we need a voice acting Emmy, and Oscar, right? And then also something as far as the horror genre being recognized, because I think we're there in terms of the catalog that's being developed right now for that genre specifically.
I don't know about horror getting its own like award for that genre, because like when you think of comedy or drama or best film, like again, there's not too many movies that have those individual categories like that. But I don't know, horror does deserve more acclaim. I would absolutely agree with that. Its own award, maybe soon, maybe over time. If I kind of just look at like this year in horror, I'm not saying there wasn't a lot to choose from, but are there 5 award-winning horror movies that came out? You guys tell us. Again, not my genre. From what I know,
probably the hope was that it was going to be the Nicolas Cage one that I haven't
Legs,
seen yet. Long Legs, yeah.
I think I saw the TV Glow counts as horror, is what
which I do want to watch. I have that in my queue.
It's on Max. Yeah. And it's on my queue as well. So
and that one's more like psychological horror. So,
and again, that's what's weird, because when we say horror, I guess if you do open it up to the other elements of horror that aren't true, like jump scare horror, maybe it works. So then, how do you differentiate that genre? And then, like, where does a movie like this fit in if it is like unintentionally a comedy? Or this one obviously is intentionally, but if there's a situation like that, where does it fall? So, again. Am I against the idea? No. But I don't know. Interesting conversation to say the least. I'm curious what people think.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are so many other horror content podcasts and YouTube pages that are well more equipped to have that discussion than us. But I know it's something that comes up quite a bit. In terms of like movies that have been nominated for Academy Awards, I wanted to pull that up as far as on Academy Award nominations. I see Carrie on here, Psycho, The Birds, Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, movies like that, Jaws, Alien, Amityville Horror, and you got to wonder like how many of these are like special effects, nominations, and costume design and things like that, cinematography, all those types of things. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation to be had. But like I said, there's not too much else to talk about when it comes to this movie. So, Eric, if you don't have anything else you want to discuss, we can get to what is we're trying to make a consistent thing each and every episode of Late to the Party. Do you have some comparisons as far as maybe what I think would be is better or worse than Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
I do, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple here that you know. So I'm going to go with as many as I can fit in here, and then we'll go over our scores. So, Phil, on IMDb's page, they have a more like this section, and we use that section when we can remember to do it on this series to say, would you rather watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil or this film? The first film, Phil, is Zombieland. So would you rather watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil or Zombieland?
Yeah, Zombieland. That is also one of my favorite horror films. Yeah, Emma Stone and Zombieland awakened something in me.
All right. What about the original Scream?
Oh, yeah, Scream. You gotta go Scream. There's like two classics right off the bat. Sorry, Tucker and Dale. We love it. I love this movie, but yeah, that's rough.
What about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
That I have not seen. Have you seen it?
Okay, I have.
Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd rather watch that.
Yeah.
What about Tremors?
Oh, man, I love Tremors. I love the Tremors franchise, even though I've only seen 3 of them. Oh, boy. I'm going to go Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I watch those movies for different things, too, but Tremors is also great. But I'll give Tucker and Dale this one.
All right, what about Shaun of the Dead?
Oh, Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, Shaun of the Dead. You can't go wrong with what's the name of the director? Why am I blanking? The one that was supposed to direct Ant-Man.
Oh, that's gonna make me mad too. Edgar Wright. I wanted to say
Wright,
Adam
yep.
Wright. I knew that was wrong.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that.
Last one, 2011's The Cabin in the Woods.
Well, Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite movies. So, sorry, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. You took a lot of L's on this one, but no, Cabin in the Woods is a classic. It's so good.
Yeah, so let's see how people felt about the movie overall, and then we will give our scores and see, although there were a lot of other movies we'd prefer to watch, did we like this one enough to give it a good score? So, Phil, take it away.
Yeah, in terms of Tucker and Dale versus Evil on Rotten Tomatoes, this is something we've seen a couple times recently. At the complete opposite end in Joker 2, where critics and audiences agree. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil has an 85% from both the tomato meter score, certified fresh, and the audience. So everyone is in agreement there for Rotten Tomatoes. And on Letterboxd, it has a 3.7 overall rating, which is pretty much where I landed as well, 3.5. Probably just as a movie itself, I think you could probably say it's just a 3. But in terms of the commentary that it has and just leaning into the silliness and leaning into the tropes from the slasher horror films, I give it that little extra bump at a 3.5. So definitely enjoyed it. And we'll talk very quickly in a moment here where that ranks in terms of the other Late to the Parties we have done, because Eric finally did his Letterboxd list.
I did. So what was your score for Tucker and Dale?
3.5.
So it's 3.5.
Yeah.
Mine was a 3. Not bad by any means of the imagination. It was just a very simple, straightforward movie. So you liked it a little bit more than me, which makes sense because, again, this kind of blends a lot of things that you prefer in your taste in like comedy and the horror like parody that it's doing there. For me, where this fell, and then I'd love to hear where yours did, because now we can compare. And in our Patreon post show, to skip ahead, we actually will go over this for the first time now that we both have a list. Phil, this fell. It's in the back half of my list, but it did fall in between Real Steel and The Menu.
I thought you liked The Menu way more than I. What did you give The Menu?
So I gave The Menu a 2.5.
Oh,
yeah,
so
I
did
didn't.
I.
No,
I could have sworn you really liked The Menu.
no.
Huh.
Going back to that episode, I didn't listen to the full episode because I had to go back and do some research. I think that was around the time we were not giving our letterbox scores publicly. We hadn't transitioned yet. but you and me both complained a lot. I'll give you the quote that I gave was, I think that this movie could use another 30 minutes, but only if it changed a lot. Like if it changed almost everything. And your response was, so if it was a movie that wasn't this one, if it was completely different, you mean? So
yeah, how long is the menu? I think the menu would have been really good if it was a different 2.5-hour movie.
Yes, yeah. So that was like the line of the episode. So that should tell you enough.
Which is crazy because like people love the menu, and I think I understand, not to make this about the menu, but I understand elements of why they would do that. But nope,
style
not for us.
Style over substance, in my opinion.
Yeah, the menu is a few spots behind this. So this is in between Edge of Tomorrow and right before Real Steel. So it's kind of funny that Real Steel came up in both places here. So
just the 10 pole for very middle of the pack movies, I guess.
Yeah. So also in the
it's
second
the middle
half.
version of The Shining being the bottom totem pole. The Real Steel is like right there in the middle.
Yeah, still more enjoyable than The Shining for both of us, which again has not been difficult to accomplish. Even Lego Ninjago cleared The Shining, so it has been a year, guys. But yeah, that's where we landed as far as this movie. Again, a lot of people very much enjoy it. A 3.7 on Letterboxd is definitely nothing to scoff at, and just a really, really fun film. So hopefully we have convinced you guys to go check it out. If you do find yourself watching like a lot of heavy horror this year, then this one will be a great like palate cleanser before you dive back into something a little bit more serious and more scary, because Tucker and Dale versus Evil isn't necessarily scary. So Eric, anything else we need to mention to our audience before we wrap this one up? The first episode of Spooktober is in the books, and we will move on to an actual horror film, an international feature, which is going to be 28 days later. It's going to be a complete tonal shift between this week and next week, because I know
Very
some
different.
of the things that happened in 28 days later, and I'm like, man, you know what this could really use? Alan Tudyk.
Like a laugh or two. Yeah. I don't know what Phil has been on, but he had control of this month, and I'm just here for the ride, guys.
Yeah, you know the meme with the sad guy on the bus? We're going to be Tucker and Dale versus Evil, the happy side, and then the sad side is going to be 28 days later. So, oh boy, cannot wait to discuss that. So, yeah. But folks, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Wait For It podcast. If you're looking for more movies, TV shows, anything like that maybe we were late to the party on, you can find the rest of our content as well as all of our episodes in the Linktree link in the show notes. You'll also find our social media pages where you can keep up with our most important pages, such as Instagram, TikTok, our growing Discord page, and Twitch, where we stream every other Thursday. If you want to support the show, you can go on to YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all of those things, share the content. You can also head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review. It is so helpful and beneficial to this podcast. And we thank you to all of you that have already gone out and done all of those things. Thank you so much. So, but if you find yourself wanting to support the show maybe a little bit more, as well as getting some additional perks, like the discussion we're going to have post-show here with Eric and I, Eric will let you know how to do just that.
Yeah, so all the free stuff is great, but if you want to do a little bit more, we'd very much appreciate it. And in return for that, over on Patreon, you'll be able to get access to behind the scenes and early access to episodes like this one, along with some additional perks depending on the tier that you pick. So with that being said, we have to shout out our patrons, T3 Cato, Stefan, Breyer, and Corey. Thank you guys so much for your support on that platform. And as we continue to grow it, we hope to be able to offer more in the future. For now, though, if you are just wanting to support us in any way, the likes, the comments, the shares, the listens, the engagement, all of the above, very much appreciated. With all that being said, we hope you appreciated and enjoyed this episode of the Wait For It podcast. My name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino, and we release new episodes every Wednesday with bonus content on platforms like Twitch and TikTok, and all you gotta do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.